Judge, from your perspective, what are the most significant threats to judicial independence at this moment?
The attacks by elected officials on the good faith work of federal judges around the country. Claims that they're partisans in robes or judicial rogues or judicial insurrectionists. These are inaccurate, first of all. Second, they're irresponsible. They erode public trust and confidence in the judiciary. And if we lose trust in our judiciary as a source of impartial justice, we've given away the game. Democracy can't flourish without that trust. Jonathan Haidt, the social psychologist at the NYU, who's done so much important work about teaching us how the brain works and how we form opinions and attachments, said a couple years ago, he predicted a catastrophic failure of American democracy because he said, we just don't know what happens to a democracy when you drain all trust from the system. Well, I actually think we do, and it looks like January 6th. If you don't have faith and confidence in our institutions, our democratic institutions, you do wild and dangerous things. So for those politicians who take pot shots at judges and call them partisans in robes, things like that, they may be scoring political points that help them with their base in the next primary election. But they're doing long-term damage to American democracy and to the rule of law. So I think that, to me, that's the most serious problem.
When we talk about that loss in public trust, what do you think are things that the legal profession, I'm thinking those on and off the bench, for example, could be doing to try to claw back some of that public trust?
Sure. Well, the first thing is they need to educate themselves about how the courts really work. And I think if people know how the courts really work, they're not perfect. The judges are not perfect. They make mistakes. They're not perfect. But if you see how the system really works, you're impressed. I was on the D.C. Circuit for 15 years, and only once in those 15 years did I see a decision that any of my colleagues made that I thought was in some way tainted by their partisan priors. Only once in 15 years, and I was looking for it. I was expecting it to be different, but it wasn't. It was a group of judges appointed by every president from Carter to Trump, each of whom had their own political views, but for the one occasion, none of them acted on those political views to determine the outcome of the case. It was amazing. And I'm sitting there and I'm hearing people with different political views laying those to one side to try and determine the outcome of a case based on the facts, based on the law, regardless of whether the consequences were going to help or hurt their own personal partisan views. That's inspiring. It was the single greatest and most pleasant surprise I found. And so I wish the American people could have the experience that I had. I wish that I could bring them into the room and see, this is what's really going on now. Judge X is not trying to help Donald Trump. Judge Y is not trying to hurt Donald Trump. They're trying to get the law right. I found that incredibly inspiring, and I wish the American people would know more about it. So therefore, it's important for people in the legal profession, it's important for judges to go out there and explain this. Traditionally, judges have laid back, let their opinions do their work for them, and I understand that. You got to be cautious about judges getting too involved in public life. But I don't know. The house is on fire right now. This is an unusual time. I think it calls for unusual measures, and I cheer those judges who get out and talk about the way the courts work so that the American people can see how they work, because it really is the crown jewel of our democracy. Not perfect, improvements can be made, but it's not a series of partisans in robes, judges just trying to do politics, wearing a robe and using fancy language. That's not what's going on.